Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah? Life's going well? Quarantining and stuff. I hope you guys are all doing really well. I'm out on my back porch. It's a beautiful day. Thought I would record a little video for this week about dehumanization. I sincerely hope you all are doing well. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help whatever situations you're finding yourselves in. But for this week, what I wanted you guys to access as far as the reading goes was about dehumanization in the book Less Than Human by David Livingstone Smith. So I had you guys read the preface this week, and I'll have you read the first chapter next week as we discuss dehumanization remotely. So I wanted to take a little bit of time today to touch on 2 points from the preface that I thought were really important for us to discuss. The first is a statement that Smith makes on page 4. You should be able to find it pretty easily in the reading that I have uploaded because I bracketed it before I uploaded that, so you're welcome. But there's a statement that he makes. He says that in the book, one of the things that he's going to argue is that dehumanization is a joint creation of biology, culture, in the architecture of the human mind. So I wanted to take a minute just to talk about this because I think it's a really important point that he makes. Throughout this semester, we have discussed how we are predisposed in so many ways to certain concepts that we've talked about. We talked about conformity, and some of our evolutionary background, how that makes us more likely to conform to group situations. Dehumanization is similar to conformity in that sense because it's a combination of kind of social and biological and neurological traits that we share. And I want to make sure that we touch on a couple of examples of each of those so that this predisposition that we have to dehumanize is really clear. The first thing that Smith mentions is that dehumanization is a joint creation of biology. Now, biology doesn't just serve as the basis for dehumanization. People are dehumanized based on some biological characteristics, whether that be skin color or whether that be other things that have been used historically that are have their roots in biology, for lack of a better way of saying it. But we are biologically predisposed to this because of our background, because of our evolutionary background. Again, I want you to picture yourself being in some tribal society, some hunter-gatherer society that existed hundreds of years, thousands of years ago. If you existed in a society like that, you would oftentimes use visual cues to tell you who belonged to your tribe and who didn't. And you became skeptical of the dangers that might lurk out there by someone who looked different than you or that possessed different biological characteristics. And those biological characteristics would get passed down from tribe to tribe because procreation would happen within those tribal groups. So oftentimes slight differences, the narcissism of minor differences that we talked about in class before, those slight biological characteristics became the basis for our ancestors to discriminate against groups for their own safety. And in the society that we live in today, we find ourselves conditioned to do, oh, my thing's falling down because it's windy. Hang in there, group. Here we are. We're back. We find ourselves in the same positions, right? Where there's different group characteristics, but we don't need to discriminate based on those for our safety like the tribal ancestors did, but we're disposed to do it biologically. He talks about culture. Obviously, culture is a huge part of this because it teaches us what's quote-unquote right and wrong or what's acceptable or not, what religions are better, what viewpoints on economic matters or political matters are better. Sheesh, I might as well just hold this now. But it can teach us what racial groups are dominant and what characteristics we might associate with those groups. So obviously culture plays a huge part of dehumanization. And lastly, Smith talks about the architecture of the human mind. Our mind is designed to use shortcuts so that every time we confront something new, we don't have to make a new judgment. We're able to use past experiences, and our mind kind of creates these boxes that we put certain ideas and definitions in. And those boxes can be manipulated and they can be changed. So if you grow up in a society that tells you this group is good and that group is bad, your mind creates those neural pathways so that you're constantly making the connection between this group and that good or bad behavior. So if we go back to a young person that's growing up in the 30s in Germany, and they're constantly hearing about how bad the Jewish population is, or how tricky they are in business, or how they lack good methods of hygiene, those are going to be really, really difficult connections that the mind has been taught to make based on kind of the biology and the sociology of the time. They're going to make those connections. The mind is going to continue to kind of wear those pathways, and it's going to be really hard for people as they grow up in that situation to leave those thoughts behind. This is why there are generational issues when it comes to things like racism and prejudice, because it's really hard to shift around what you've been taught your whole life. Even if you know that it's not the right thing, it's difficult to be able to shake yourself from those connections that you've had taught to you throughout your entire life. So this idea of dehumanization being a connection or an intersection between biology, culture, and the architecture of the mind, I think, is a really important concept. Last one, I'll make this point quickly. They say in the preface, it matters not what side of the conflict you are on, dehumanization occurs. Whether Palestinian or Israeli, German or Jew, American or Japanese, dehumanization happens. It doesn't matter what side of the conflict it happens on. Whether you're quote the good guys or quote the bad guys, dehumanization happens because we need that moral disengagement to participate in violence, even if we feel that ethics and morality are on our side. We need to be able to distance ourselves from hurting people that are like us, that we see and we know are human. We have to dehumanize them to be able to participate in that. I hope these few ideas kind of help clarify some of the stuff that you're supposed to read. Hope you enjoy the interview with David Livingstone Smith on the NPR podcast. And again, I hope you all are really doing well, that you're finding this online experience somewhat navigable. And if you're having any problems, please reach out to me, and I will post another video at some point next week. See you guys.